If I asked you, tell me why we celebrate the Lord's Supper, what would you say? I mean, you can't answer me right now, of course, but think about it in your mind. What would you say? Well, our passage here in Exodus 13 helps us a little with that. Let's start reading in verse 8. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be a sign to you. It shall be to you as a sign on your hand and a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this statute at its appointed time from year to year. So this is about explaining the Feast of Unleavened Bread and explaining the Passover. The Feast of Unleavened Bread was a week-long celebration that started with the Passover. And look at why God tells them to observe it. It was a reminder of their redemption from slavery, that they belong to him, that they are God's people, and that he alone is their Savior. God told them to celebrate the Passover and the feast once a year at the very beginning of their year, so that they would never forget as they go throughout the year that he is their Savior, and that their salvation came by his strength and his grace alone. And of course, you guys know that Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper at the Passover as the replacement for us, a new sign. Yet we celebrate the Lord's Supper for the same reasons, to remember that Jesus bought us out of slavery to sin by his own blood, that we belong to him, that we are his people, and that he alone is our Savior. When you take the Lord's Supper, when we get to the point back where we can do that again safely all together, it is a sign to you of what Jesus has done. Yet it's also a physical seal that makes it even more real than us just hearing it. You see, most of what God has given us as reminders of his word and his promises come to us by the Bible, by reading and hearing it. But God has also graciously given us a physical sign to seal that to us, to tell us that it's true. I mean, you guys know what a seal is, right? It's a physical stamp or a ring or something like that that a king, a house, a government official, or someone else would use to stamp something to say, what is said on this paper has my backing to it. It is as real as I am, as real as this stamp is. Well, the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Lord's Supper are God's seal to the truth that we hear. He's saying to us, as real as this bread is, as real as this wine or this juice is, as really as you can touch them and eat them and drink them, so real is your salvation when you trust Jesus, your Lamb. He knows that we're a physical people and we need physical reminders every now and then. So he graciously gives us that in the Lord's Supper. So whenever we get a chance to take the Lord's Supper again, you can take it better by thinking about certain things as you do it. Like in the Passover, the firstborn son would look at the lamb and know that the lamb died instead of him. You can look at the bread and the juice and the wine and know that Jesus died instead of you. In the Passover and the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, they were reminded that they belonged to God, for he bought them out of slavery. Well, you can look at the Lord's table and remember that you are not your own, but have been bought with a price, the price of Jesus' blood, and you belong to him, as we talked about yesterday. And thirdly, the whole community celebrated the Passover together and the feast together. Now, they did it in individual households, but they all did it at the same time. That reminded them that they are all connected as the people of God. Well, we take the Passover individually, but we do it in worship all together because it reminds us that we are all together the people of God. We are his people. So you should look around when we get to do that again on Sunday mornings and think, these are my people. Even so-and-so over there that I don't particularly like very much, he's my people. She's my people. Because we're all connected and united together in Jesus. And then fourth, the Passover feast reminded them that they only had one Savior. No matter what happened after this, they were reminded once a year, at the beginning of every year, that God alone is their Savior. Well, the Lord's Supper is exactly that for us. We're tempted often to think that to look to other things as our kind of Savior in this life. But the Lord's Supper is a regular reminder that we only have one Savior, Jesus. I mean, as the song we sang this past Sunday says, on Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. You guys think about that, and I'll see you tomorrow.